Good morning. Thank you for coming today. Before we begin, I want to make it clear that I requested this press conference to be here today because this is where we live. We don't live over there. This is where we live. This is the street where my wife and I have lived for over 21 years. And like many, we sacrificed to buy a home here because this community was safe and affordable. And we loved it. This is where we raised our children. This park is where our kids played. That hill is where my kids tobogganed every winter. But now our streets and our parks are unsafe. They're filled with people publicly getting high or passing out in communities and parks. They're discarding needles. And we're experiencing serious and violent crimes in our community pretty much on a daily basis. And we're so incredibly sad, frustrated, and disappointed that this situation has continued for so long. When this started, we were told this wellness center would be something wonderful, and we wanted it to succeed. But it didn't take long to see that this was not a wellness center at all. This was a warehouse of 106 camping cots, offering no real security, no dignity, nor any privacy, with only 2 bathrooms for 106 people, and with an operator who clearly stated he didn't care about our community. So we organized and we spent many hours trying to bring changes that would make this facility a safer and more responsible place for everyone, most especially the homeless. For over a year, we were the only community in Canada fighting for a safe and responsible 30-bed shelter to be in our community. We want the homeless to get help. We want to be reasonable, and we were willing to do our part. And it needs to be said, there is not one city councillor in this city, there is not one community in this city that has stepped forward and said they would take a shelter in their own communities. But as much as we tried to help, the reality is this shelter has drawn way too much criminal activity to our community, and we are not equipped to deal with the serious issues that are happening almost daily on our front doorsteps. Every member of this city council has described this shelter as a failure and a disaster. It was the main reason why City Council canceled the opening of a shelter in Sutherland. And yet they didn't lift a finger to help us. When police and fire have been doing everything in our community that they can, and we greatly appreciate everything they're doing, I can't say enough about their efforts. The reality is our only hope for an end to this situation has been a promise from the province that it would reduce and even close this shelter. But the city must first find other locations to replace the beds in Fairhaven. So you can imagine how incredibly frustrating it is to us and for the homeless that the city has been having funding sitting available since September last year to open 2 new shelters. And the city hasn't yet even announced a location. And I want to be clear about the consequences of this. The city's failure to make this a priority left 60 vulnerable people on the streets all winter long. And now it's going to leave us with another summer facing chaos and crime. This must change. This is unsustainable. The homeless need real solutions, and people are reaching a breaking point. As we continue to dig for evidence, we recently have pieced together something that quite frankly is appalling, because the shelter appears to have been operating illegally ever since the day it opened. Let me explain. At the base of our society, we know every person and business has a responsibility to comply with all the laws and regulations of the land. And this includes cities. The Cities Act clearly states that cities are subject to provincial laws. So provincial laws must be applied when developing and upholding city bylaws. On August 25th, 2022, the city provided a letter informing social services that this facility would be operating as a special care home, which complies with the M2 zoning designation for this property. For clarity, there were concerns that the M2 zoning does not allow shelters, and they didn't want a rezoning process to take place. Since the letter is an official document from the city, the operator must have informed the city that this was their intention. Now, as well, the letter clearly states some conditions, such as carbon monoxide alarms and fire extinguishers, a commercial kitchen, suppression, and exhaust systems would need to be installed. 18 months later, here we are today, and there is no commercial kitchen in that facility. And we have to question, did any other of the safety elements get installed? But that's only the beginning. In the letter, the city defines how they see this operating as a special care home for the purposes of the bylaw. But special care homes are regulated by provincial law. Those laws, which the city are subject to follow and uphold, specifically define what a special care home is, how it must operate, and what services they can provide. As the operator should already know these laws, if the facility is operating as a special care home, there appears to be numerous violations that have been occurring for the past 18 months under provincial law. Now, I have a handout for you afterwards. It includes a copy of the letter and the violations we suspect that have been happening there. But there's still more. At a recent meeting, we found out the agreement with social services provides funding, but the funding is to operate a shelter, not a special care home. Now, this makes sense because the facility is not listed with the province as a special care home, which is mandated and required under provincial law to safeguard the public and ensure illegal care homes are not operating in the province. So if we consider the various laws involved, if this is a special care home, it's illegal per provincial laws and even the conditions set out in the letter. If it's a shelter, which it's funded as such, it's illegal under the zoning bylaw. Now, this raises major concerns. Since the operator agreed this would be a special care home, why has the operator failed to comply with the legal requirements for 18 months? Did the city ever follow up and inspect the property to ensure everything was up to code? It's logical if they had, it would surely be compliant with all the laws and regulations, or it would have been closed by now. So other questions come to mind. Who is involved in deciding this location and that it would be a special care home? As the provincial funding is for a shelter, did the operator ever intend to legally comply as a special care home, as agreed with the city? Who failed in their duties to protect the community and ensure this property was up to code, especially after knowing the massive detrimental effects on our community? Was the city complicit in allowing this to operate illegally for over 18 months? How much legal liability does the city have to the residents and businesses of our community because they failed for 18 months to ensure this facility was up to code? Every resident of Saskatoon should be asking these questions, because if the city neglected our communities for such a long time, and we know they're looking for more shelters, no one should trust that the city will do this right, let alone take the responsibility to fix what they've done wrong. So today as a community, we're openly demanding the following. 1, the city must inspect this facility and cite the operator for failing to operate as a special care home. As the operator agreed with the city and failed to meet the legal requirements for over 18 months, and considering they are funded as a shelter, and given the significant hardships and damages to our communities, the operator should be given 60 days to structure a complete shutdown of this illegal operation. Secondly, the city must initiate an investigation by an impartial investigator to find out how this situation ever came to be, how this facility could run illegally for over 18 months, and determine who is responsible for allowing this to happen and hold those people accountable. Third, the city of Saskatoon must create a fund to reimburse the losses and expenses incurred by residents and businesses because the city failed to uphold its duty to ensure this facility was up to code or shut it down in a timely manner. Fourth, the city of Saskatoon must find appropriate shelter locations regarding the provincial funding already in place, but also to find safe and appropriate locations to replace the beds that have been operating illegally here in Fairhaven. It's astounding to think that this has been allowed to devastate our community and severely impact our lives, putting thousands of people at risk for 18 months, and it needs to be shut down. As a community, we have no expertise to advise as to where these beds should be moved, but we will share our collective experiences to help the city find the best shelter locations possible. To that end, we are suggesting that the province create a task force to focus on the growing issues of homelessness and complex needs in the province. These are real people. They have real needs, I know, because I've met many of them and I've tried to help them. They need real investments and solutions that will allow them every possibility to recover and restore their lives, that they can be productive and healthy. But it's also time to end the Fairhaven fiasco. The thousands of people affected by this illegal shelter are real people too. Many of the people standing behind me all live here in this community, and many more wanted to be here, but they work hard. They have jobs to do, to pay their bills, to keep their homes. People who have worked hard and invested in this community over decades, paid their taxes, only to have their lifelong investment and even their lives and their families put in jeopardy because of irresponsible and negligent decisions. This should have never happened. And as a city, we should make sure it never happens again.